is July 30th. Is probably when you're listening to this. This is the PFF Forecast. Really fun episode. We've got Brett Kollmann of the Film Room on. He is a solo film enthusiast. If you haven't checked out his stuff, it's really fun. He used to work at NFL Network, has a bunch of experience, and we had a really good conversation. So let's rock. All right, Eric. Opt-outs. I just need to know: Are you opting out this season, or are you sticking around?
No. And I want to bring this up because one of our friends said this. I think it's the most absurd thing ever. The idea that people in sports don't want to have sports happen. Yes. There probably are a few of these people. I grant all of you that, but does that not tilt you?
It makes me very annoyed. And the worst is when people decide that there's this alternative reason that people have ahead of, oh, it's my job and I need to get paid. That blows my mind. It's
or people have an alternative, you only want coronavirus to be, you only want to point out that coronavirus is dangerous because you hate the president or something.
Right.
And it's no, actually, I just don't want you guys to die.
Yes.
And here selfishly, I'd really like for the virus to be controlled so we can have an NFL season and you and I can have jobs, for the fall. I mean, it's absurd.
There is a middle ground of communicating truth and being optimistic. It's possible to do that, but the truth sometimes is not rosy. And if you don't take things seriously, that's how you end up getting screwed. Yeah. Anyways, some of the things that have happened recently, we'll get to Brett here in just a second. Some of these opt-outs, also a non-opt-out, but maybe an opt-out. Vic Beasley apparently.
Yeah, hopefully he's okay.
Has not been found. So, yeah, I guess. Any of these opt-outs actually worry you at all?
Here's some low-key ones. I think Devin Funchess matters. Because the Packers don't have another NFL caliber receiver aside from Devontae Adams yet, right? And obviously Hightower is a big one, but Belichick's not going to let his defense hit the skids because of a linebacker, right? So that one's a big name, but not that big of a deal. We'll see. I mean, there was a rumor about Foles. It sounds like Foles is going to play. So, we still have a handful of days before this is all said and done. And I do think it's good that there are players that are taking this seriously. I do think that's good. I think all the players that decide to play deserve our appreciation, and because they're sacrificing something. And then all the players who decide not to play deserve our appreciation because they're sacrificing something. So it's going to be an interesting few days.
That's certainly true, and anyone that wants to get angry at somebody that's decided to opt out should go kick rocks where the sun does not shine. But so I want to say that some of these matter a little bit. I certainly think that having Yodny Cajuste protecting Cam Newton is less than ideal for the New England Patriots. But ultimately, these are things this is going to be a season of great attrition, where a lot of players are going to, miss time. And so I wouldn't make too big of a deal over guys opting out right now, unless, of course, it's your quarterback, but I don't foresee that happening now that Big Dick Nick is going to be competing with Mitch Trubisky, thank God. And so I think we're making kind of mountains out of molehills with respect to how it plays out on the field.
I have an interesting, because you've done such a, collectively, but you specifically have done such a great job of booking guests. The next time that we don't have a guest, what we should do is take prop bets on the state of the NFL. One of them that I'm thinking of is, what is the average time to throw this year?
I like it.
Let's do a list of those things, and obviously maybe we'll alternate steak dinner bets on it.
I'm here for that. I'm here for that. All right, Brett Kollmann, here he is. All right, we have joining us, this is a long time coming, Brett Kollmann, the Film Room. You can find him on Twitter or brettkollman.squarespace.com. Bunch of really great YouTube content, breaking stuff down as you would expect with film, but also with a lot of numbers. And we have been recommended that we are like, you got to get Brett on the show. You got to get Brett on the show. I've had close friends reach out to me about it. So we finally made it happen. You're joining us from California. I'm trying to get into California mindset. How is it out there?
It is hot right now. I mean, and we're not even in the hardest part of the year. Like September, October is really where it starts to heat up. But we've already had some pretty hot days out here.
No, you don't know. It's not hot there. It's perfect. Right now, hot is 99 with like 87 to 95% humidity, which is what Eric and I are dealing with. So.
Oh man. Yeah, at least it's a dry heat out here.
Man, someday, Eric, we'll have the boat there. I wanted to start off with this because mostly for my own curiosity is just to tell us your background and how you got to where you're at right now, with doing all the cool YouTube content that you do and kind of being a lone ranger is the wrong term, but like standing on your own as someone that people come to look for NFL film analysis.
Yeah, so I was at NFL Network for 5 years on the production side over in Culver City, California. And I actually started making videos that weren't even like super well done. Like looking back on them now, I'm like, oh man, this is really bad. But I was kind of making like proof of concept videos for my producers because I was like, look, could we just do something like this, but have MJD voice it or have Willie McGinnis voice it or something like that. I never really had any intention of being like on camera or doing the voiceovers or anything like that. I just wanted to produce segments. And they started to get popular with for some reason. And people started following the channel, and I would only put out an episode like once every few months, but people really liked them. And it got to a point where my wife was like, you're not even really trying here, and it's gaining steam. Like, what happens if you actually like, went off on your own and tried and did this full time? And I credit her every day for kind of encouraging me to do that because I loved working at NFL Network. It's great. I loved my time there for 5 years, but I didn't have kids yet. I didn't have a mortgage yet. I was like, if there's ever a time that I could flop, it would be right now. So I went out and tried it, and it worked somehow. And 3 years later, here we are.
Well, also, you got rid of the commute.
That's true. 6 hours a day on my worst days was not super efficient for getting film study done. I'll just say that.
Yeah, that's really. I mean, that's awesome, and sort of shows football. It's so interesting, right, George? We think about all of our paths to working in football are so unique, right? And so almost never like the path that any of us would envision, and yours is certainly one as well, where you have an existing platform, and that existing platform isn't even ready for your skill set yet, and you go and build your own. That's a pretty cool testament. Here's a question I have, which I'm sort of just thinking about. Obviously we come at it from the analytics perspective, and you come at it from watching film, but you are able to sort of combine the two. What's the next thing we're going to learn about football? When it comes to those of us that are sort of like dripped in it every single day. What's something that you sort of have in your mind that not the average football fan is just not aware of yet?
I think I was actually listening to, I think it was on like Sirius XM NFL Radio, because I think PFF has a show on that channel. Mm-hmm. And this was like 2 years ago. And for the life of me, I can't remember who was doing that show. But they did a whole segment on how secondaries are more important than defensive lines when it comes to affecting the pass game.
That's our fault, I think, yeah.
But it really got me thinking, because for the longest time, everybody think, okay, you build with the trenches, and you always want to get pressure more than you want to have coverage. And they were going through all these data sets that showed that really it was lockdown coverage that had more of an impact on pressure than just pure front seven talent having an impact on coverage efficiency. And I think we really started to see that bear out with the Patriots defense last year, where it was lockdown coverage. They're playing man, I think it was 54% of the time, which is more than anybody else. And their front seven really had no true stars, but they were still able to generate pressure with creative blitzes and kind of really a well-coached front seven, and just a whole bunch of pocket collapsers in addition to tight coverage that was really having just a nightmarish effect on quarterbacks. And every time I watched the Patriots defense, I thought back to that segment. I was like, damn, they nailed it. And I think there's still a prevailing thought among football fans that defensive lines, if you don't have 4 pass rushers, you're never going to affect the pass game. Damn the secondary. But I think watching the success of the Patriots and watching the success that I think the Dolphins are going to have making the same approach, we're going to start to see that narrative flip of getting 3 really good man corners and at least 1 safety that can take away tight ends. That's going to be more important than having a 15, 16, 17 sack a year kind of edge rusher.
It's fascinating that you say that, because I was just, not to brag here, I was having a conversation with Richard Sherman. Eric's heard me say this, by the way, like 15 times since I have, and I'm going to keep saying it. It's okay. And I was surprised to hear him. I asked him kind of these same questions. I didn't like straight out say, what's more important, but we talked about the coverage pass rush relationship, and he was very much more supportive of the importance of a pass rush, I think, than maybe I would have expected. But I wonder if the reason for that, and I'm curious your thought on this, but I wonder if the reason for that is that you can have one great pass rusher and you can feel like you have a successful pass rush. And Eric, you've written about this. You can't just have one good corner and feel like you have a good coverage unit. And so it's almost like the ease of creating a good pass rush versus the ease of creating a good coverage unit is what makes you feel like you have to have a good, that pass rush is more important, because it's just so hard to really actually pin down what makes your coverage unit so good.
And, you can scheme pressure fairly efficiently. Like if you have a really well-coached defensive line that knows how to execute a gate stunt really well, if they can execute ETs really well, and really kind of attack the angles of pass protection regardless of the talent of the offensive line. Like angles are angles, space is space. Like you could scheme pressure that way. We've even seen, some guys like the Giants back against the Patriots using a freaking coffee house technique really effectively. Like you can do that against really good offenses. But if you're rolling out with 1 corner and then you got 2 scrubs, if you're getting the ball out in 2.5 seconds, it doesn't matter if you're able to scheme that pressure as well if the ball's out, because your corners are so bad and they can't cover for 2.5 seconds. So I agree. Like it's a lot easier to get pressure with 5 or 6 guys with maybe none of them being A-tier talents compared it is to getting really good coverage with only 1 great corner. Like 100% agreed on that.
The hard part is that there's a couple reasons why I think our intuition on this was wrong. I mean, one of them is the broadcast angle, right? Almost every football fan, when they watched the Giants play the Patriots in 2007, saw Tuck, Umanura, and Strahan, right? And that was sort of we saw that and it happened. And for the longest time, teams thought, I mean, we make fun of Norv Turner and the way that he runs his offense, but like 20 years ago, that's how everybody thought they had to run an offense. You have to be able to drop back 7 steps on 3rd down. You have to be able to, protect for a certain amount of time. And, you bring up the Patriots insofar as their defense, but on offense, they flipped that over, right? You look at the 2018 AFC Championship game, and the Chiefs have a great pass rush with Dee Ford and Justin Houston and Chris Jones. And they said, well, but they can't cover anybody. So we're just going to throw the ball in 2 seconds and make them beat us, make them win in 2.5 seconds or less. And none of us see that or really understand it quite as well as we do what happens up front. But it is really important because an offense, doesn't have to play by those rules anymore. They can choose, to take advantage of a secondary. And it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to choose to take advantage of one of the 5 weak links in the secondary than it is to just, chip block a really good defensive end.
Or even, going back to the same Patriots team in 2011 when they still had Gronk and Hernandez and their top 2 wide receivers were both slot receivers. Because I think, Wes was still there at the time. Jules was young. Danny Amendola was there. So they had a very unconventional receiving core, but because their 2 tight ends were honestly their best receiving weapons, they were able to take advantage of that market inefficiency around the league at linebacker and still get the ball out really quick. And they rode that all the way to a Super Bowl and ironically lost again to the Giants. But still, that was at the time, that was one of the greatest passing offenses ever, despite not really having a true great X receiver like we had seen for decades previous.
You're absolutely right. And the idea is that back in the day, they thought they had to play 3 linebackers, first and second down and 2 on third down.
The Seahawks still think that.
And now it's teams know that they don't have to, right? And it sort of changes the calculus a little bit. Or, you don't have to cover a tight end with a safety or a linebacker. You can use a Chris Harris if you want to or something. And again, it's the chess match that's so interesting.
Let's talk about the Patriots that are currently Patriots, because you did a really cool video on this, Brett, that I was checking out on Cam. And we mentioned Norv Turner and how his offense, when he was the offensive coordinator with the Panthers, was really so different than what Cam had done in the past. And it was interesting to me because I had always thought, of Norv Turner in a different light. But he leveraged Cam a lot in the quick passing game. And we had a conversation, Eric and I did, just the other day about, like the turnaround of Matt Stafford and how it was, launching the ball downfield, taking shots down the field. Do you think that the Patriots will do any of that, or are they really going to leverage, they're just going to go all in on this timing passing game?
If I was them, I would go all in on the timing, because when you look at those first 9 weeks of 2018 when Cam was still healthy, and I laid out these stats in the video too, but I'll lay it out here for people that haven't seen it. So again, in the first 9 weeks before Cam's shoulder was ruined, and then he really couldn't play after that, so they averaged 3.6 red zone trips per game. That was top 10. 72.4% red zone TD efficiency. That was 5th. Average time of possession was over 30 minutes, was at 30-34. That's top 10. Their third down conversion percentage was 15th. So that was the only thing that was about average for them. But they ran the ball 45% of the time, which was top 5, I believe. They had a team completion percentage in terms of average completion percentage of 67.4, which was the highest that Cam had ever had. That was top 8 in the league. They had +1 per game in turnover margin. That was top 4. So even though their YPA was only 6.9, which was below average at the time, they were ultra efficient in terms of getting to the red zone, scoring in the red zone, holding onto the ball, converting on third downs, not turning the ball over and costing themselves possessions. And they played a very Patriot style of don't make mistakes, make the plays when they count, score when you need to. And they started out 6-2 that year. And they were on track to be not just a playoff team, but probably have a playoff bye because they were playing that ultra efficient style. And to me, that just screams Patriots in terms of getting the ball out quick, be efficient, be accurate. Cam, other than 2012 and 2015, has never been a highly accurate deep ball thrower, statistically speaking. And so I think if you really just stick to what he's good at and have him be a quick game quarterback, in addition to providing some value in the run game, giving you +1 in numbers down in the red zone when you're really trying to punch it in, that kind of stuff screams Patriots. And I think it's going to work for those reasons.
You bring up red zone, which is so interesting because I think most of us, and our colleague Timo Risky writing, he's going to produce an article about the red zone this week. Usually both of us would say that's a lot of noise. But I do think Cam provides a different aspect, right? He's singular enough where the red zone is probably something where if schemed right, he can be somebody who is consistently better than average, don't you think? Because as a runner, he's just somebody who's different than as far as being able to push a pile, to have the designed runs. Obviously Lamar is very good in that sense as well, and there are other quarterbacks, like Kyler Murray. But Cam is a singular player in that regard, and I think just being able to be a designed runner and average 4.5, 5.5 yards a carry down in the red zone makes it easier on McCaffrey, makes it easier on harder on opposing linebackers. And the Patriots, I think, if any team's going to be able to leverage that as much as anybody else, they're going to be the one.
Especially near the goal line, right? I mean, that's a huge win.
Really, anywhere inside the 20-yard line when the field gets compressed. Lamar's a great runner, obviously. Kyler is a great runner, obviously. But I think they're better as runners when there's a lot more field to work with. Whereas Cam, when he's in a phone booth, he's so big and strong that even if you're making contact, he can still fight through it. And, even when you're looking like really tight in the red zone, if you're inside 10 yards where there's not a lot of space, and even on play action, like it's a little bit easier to recover and get back to your landmarks. And so the windows are tighter. And if you don't have a great, go up and get it type receiver that can go win on fades when they do give you those one-on-one looks, like you have to find a way to create an advantage in tight spaces. And having a quarterback that can run and make a linebacker hesitate just to give Sony Michel that little bit of extra crease that you need, or, make a safety hesitate. And then you can kind of go up and throw a pop pass. Like, we're going to see some tricky stuff in New England leveraging the threat of Cam. Even if they're not giving him the ball that much because they want to preserve his body, just the threat of Cam can create space and angles. And in that kind of tight area of the field, that's really all you need.
I was thinking about, you mentioned the accuracy stuff, and that's kind of my big question, right? Is, you go from Tom Brady, who was so accurate, and they struggled last year despite how accurate he was, because it doesn't matter if you're throwing into tight coverage, you can be really accurate. Your numbers are just going to go down. So is it less about accuracy and more really about the system and leveraging Cam's ability to run the ball to create more openings, where it doesn't matter if you throw a catchable but inaccurate pass if the guy has a step of separation, whereas even if you throw a pretty accurate pass that's on a receiver's frame in tight coverage, you're going to have a low completion percentage.
Yeah, and I think there's accuracy and there's ball placement, because there's throwing it within an area's within a receiver's neighborhood that's really important. But I think when it comes to this kind of system, again, where the windows are really tight, you can't just hit the neighborhood. You got to hit the right house. Mm-hmm. That was a problem that I felt Daniel Jones had, where even if you're throwing it, quote unquote, on target, if you're throwing it to the wrong shoulder, or you're throwing it, maybe a step too late, where a DB can get his arm in there, like, it doesn't matter if it's technically catchable. You're not making your receiver's job any easier. And I feel like that actually is a strength of Cam in the quick game specifically. Definitely not as a deep ball thrower, but in the quick game specifically, he's excellent at reading defenses and knowing where his leverage advantages are. And if you know where a leverage advantage is, you can get it out on time and place it properly with that leverage, then it makes your receiver's job easier and you can be a lot more efficient on offense. That's why in 2015 they went to the Super Bowl with a whole bunch of trash cans for receivers and an older Greg Olsen.
Ted Ginn would beg the difference.
Ted Ginn's wide open all the time. He just doesn't catch it.
He was amazing throwing the ball deep because Ginn was open all the time.
But he made his receivers' jobs easier because he knows how to throw with leverage. He knows the matchups he needs to hit. And that is a crucial skill set in terms of improving accuracy.
Assume Cam stays relatively healthy, plays, say 13 plus games. What's your prediction for the Patriots this year?
In a normal season, I would say they challenge for the division. I think it would be neck and neck with Buffalo. But the fact that they're having so many guys opt out, and the fact that people are going to get sick, it's statistically unlikely that nobody's going to get sick. And so now it really just depends on who gets sick. Is it, like, let's say
Is it Bill Belichick?
but if, God forbid, Bill Belichick gets sick and he's out for 2 or 3 weeks, like, that's a major factor. What if McDaniels gets sick? What if Cam gets sick?
Yeah.
This season is impossible to predict. And God help you if you're trying to play Super Bowl bets now, because it is impossible to predict, because it's not just the quote unquote injury issues that we can chalk up to any given team, and maybe that's Russian roulette. But this, statistically, it is unlikely that players are not going to get sick and that coaches are not going to get sick, and it really just comes down to who gets sick and when. It's impossible to know.
Do you think Belichick I mean, I want 99.9% of me thinks that this, all the opt-outs are mostly. I don't think the Patriots are going to have any more opt-outs than everybody else once it's all said and done on August 3rd. But the Patriots are sort of getting a decent number of them out of the way because Belichick is just somebody who plans things, and I think there's enough players on Belichick's roster for whom the drop-off between them and a practice squad guy is minimal at this point, and that's probably how he's going to devise his schemes, right? On defense specifically, they lost a ton of talent in the front seven. They didn't have that much to begin with, but they lost the talent that they had in the front seven. In the secondary, they're still probably okay, and that's really, I think, where it crumbles if any guys get sick. And then on offense, their issue a season ago is their receivers couldn't get separation. That's really not going to change. Like, that's a restraint that they're going to have to deal with, regardless of who's out there. So maybe Belichick's sort of looking at this season and saying, look, we have to thread a really thin needle, and there's only a couple really key variables, and it's our secondary and it's Cam.
Yeah, and I would say I agree with you. Their secondary's fine. I think they're pretty much replacing the entire second level of their defense this year. Since Van Noy's gone, Donta's opting out. Chung, I consider him a second level defender when you just consider how he's used. And I think Landon Roberts isn't with them this year either, right? If I remember correctly. So there's pieces they have to replace there, and I think you're right in terms of the talent gap between who's going to be out there versus who was out there last year is not super big, but the communication issue is definitely going to be a factor. And I think it's going to take a while for Bill to get them into a spot where they're communicating properly, because there's a lot of checks in this defense. And I mean a lot of checks. And having a new guy wearing the green dot out there is going to be a major factor. And I think we're really not going to see what this Patriots defense is like until probably about mid-October, because, again, there's no preseason either. And so I think it's going to be 5 or 6 weeks before we really see this Patriots defense with all these new guys come together, secondary notwithstanding. And the offense, too. I think it's going to be mid-October before we really start to see Cam get comfortable. And if I was them, I would throw Cam out there week 1, because at this point, really the only way he's going to get comfortable is getting play time. Like, I don't really want to waste time with Jarrett Stidham here. But it might be a rough first 5 or 6 weeks for New England. Not that they're a great September team to begin with, but we're not really going to see what they really are as a team until close to halfway through the year.
It had that 2017 feel to its defense where they were atrocious for the first 4 or 5 weeks. Then their schedule eases up, and then they end up making it at least to the Super Bowl. But you're right. It's not going to be that simple. I mean, they have home games. Am I looking at this right? They start out with 3 straight home games. Well,
That's
it might
odd.
just – yeah, in any event, they have some pretty tough teams on their schedule, starting out with, like I believe Seattle and Kansas City and the Niners right away. But I could be mistaken here. But anyway, yeah, I do agree with you that getting off to a slow start is probably going to be characteristic of their season.
Let's talk young quarterbacks. You mentioned Daniel Jones. Let's just start with him. Super polarizing guy. I have a comp prepared for my friend Eric here, but I want to hear your thoughts on Daniel Jones first.
So he is trying not to offend Giants fans.
No, you can't. That's not possible. It's like talking about the Bears.
I mean, there's some good aspects to his game, but those good aspects, I think, contribute to the bad aspects, where he's not scared of pressure, but part of the reason why he's not scared of pressure is because he doesn't feel pressure at all.
Sam Bradford.
That's actually not not bad at all. I would say that Sam, though, was a lot better at deep ball placement, and like I mentioned earlier, with leverage, like his on-target accuracy on deep balls was pretty high. It was like top 8 in the league.
Bradford had amazing arm talent. Right?
In terms of accuracy.
Yeah, just zip.
Yeah. Not in terms of strength, but accuracy, I 100% agree. But Jones's deep ball on-target percentage was top 8 in the league, but his actual completion percentage was 28. It was down at like 25%, which is atrocious. And so I looked at those numbers and I was like, what the hell happened there? So I looked at every single deep attempt he took, and his ability to throw with leverage is not there. His ability to see a corner stacking and throw it back shoulder instead of leading him into contact deeper upfield, like that was infuriating. And so I think the deep ball placement is part of the reason why his completion percentage was so low, even though technically he was on target. Again, it's throwing to the right neighborhood versus throwing to the right house. Yep. That is a critical skill set that he does not have. In addition to the fact that he can't feel pressure, and he's also really bad at reading match zone defenses. Those gave him a lot of problems. We saw that against New England, where he threw a deep, I think it was a deep out against cover 2, where there was a mistake by Stephon Gilmore where he trailed instead of sinking, and they came back like 3 or 4 plays later and tried pretty much the exact same thing. And he just assumed that Gilmore wasn't going to be there, and he just didn't see him sinking under the route and got picked. It's that kind of stuff where it's like he's locking in on the first read, and he doesn't see hang defenders in zone coverages. So when you throw that in with the deep ball placement issues, the lack of seeing pressure, like, I get it. He's a tough kid. He's athletic. His arm is okay. When he's under pressure, he keeps his eyes down the field. Like, there's stuff to like there, but... Okay. There's also.
I was going to say, let me give you, because I thought you described perfectly my comp, which is, I think he's a poor-ish man's Jameis Winston.
100%. 100%. And I actually said in the episode, like, he's Jameis with some different qualities here and there, but like the core of it is doing something really exciting and then making absolutely horrific mistakes.
Yeah. Eric loves Jameis Winston.
I like Jameis Winston more than I like Marcus Mariota. Let's go with that.
I thought you were going to say your own children.
My thing is I was looking at Jones. Was surprised. The percentage of pressures that resulted in sacks for him was not very high compared to the rest of the league. He's nowhere near Tannehill, Murray, Flat. Those guys.
Yeah, but half of them are fumbles.
Yeah, that's what I'm wanting. So in the pocket, his awareness is tricky because he fumbles the ball so much.
Have you looked at his time to sack average though? Because it's only 3.12 seconds, which is very, very low. It's right up there with Keenum and Goff and Matt Ryan and Brady and Rivers and all these statuesque quarterbacks, whereas all the mobile guys, and keep in mind, like, Daniel Jones is a good athlete, but all the mobile guys that have his kind of athleticism are like over 4 seconds, which means he's not seeing the first wave of pressure.
He's just not seeing the...
He gets killed.
Yeah, I mean, I like quarterbacks that are efficient, even if they have mistakes, because I feel like the biggest issue is, when you have a guy who's too afraid to make a mistake, you end up with an offense that is no fun to watch. And if a guy's going to be average or below average, I at least want the offense to be fun to watch, like Jameis's Tampa Bay offense was. I
thought Sam Bradford was a very interesting one. You do a good job of throwing stuff out the wall.
I mean, Bradford was the year that he played for the Vikings. His passer rating when pressured was like second in the league. But our friend Steve sort of made the point that a lot of that's just because he's so oblivious to it that it he's just like, he throws a seed to Stephon Diggs on a post. He doesn't know enough to be scared of the guy that's like barreling in on him.
Yeah, he got speared in the chest so many times that eventually he just saw ghosts.
Speaking of an offense that was not fun to watch, the 16 Vikings was something else. But yeah, I mean, what do you, as far as prospects for this year, Brett? What do you think about the two NFC East quarterbacks, Dwayne Haskins and Jones? I mean, we've sort of gone back and forth on the two, but I think the consensus opinion was that Haskins was pretty poor last year.
I think Haskins was poor for most of the year. And then the last few weeks, I think we started to kind of see some glimpses of what I thought he was going to be coming out of Ohio State. I had a much higher grade on Haskins than I did on Daniel Jones. Much higher.
I think we were in the same boat.
Yeah, most people did, I would assume. I still had Kyler over both of them fairly comfortably, but I still, if we're going like overall year, Jones probably had overall a better year. If we're going just the last few games that we saw, like, okay, where were you at by the end of your rookie year? I would say Haskins was better. I'm not saying he was great. He was not Kyler Murray. Like, Kyler Murray was amazing. Even Drew Lock, I felt, had some good stuff that maybe put him above both of them. Even Gardner Minshew. Yeah, of course. But I'm still more encouraged by Haskins based on what I saw last than what I saw overall from Daniel Jones.
Plus, Haskins came into that we have forgotten. The Redskins have been such a dumpster fire. I can't even call it that anymore.
They were last good in 1991.
The Washington football dumpster fire that was last year when Haskins came in, it was so awful. I can't imagine a guy coming in having no clue what whether his head coach wants him there or if his head coach even cares. And so I think it makes sense that eventually, towards the end of it, he kind of figured himself out. It'd be fascinating to watch this year because I agree.
They didn't even want him playing. I mean, that was the whole. They started Colt McCoy against New England when he was healthy.
Vote of confidence.
Yeah, and to me, the Washington football team going into last year with Jay Gruden was one of the more perplexing things I've seen. Right, because they sort of gave him a pass for lucking into winning 6 of the first 9 games with Alex Smith, and then kind of nothing after that. But it wasn't a good team fundamentally, even with Alex Smith. And then last year was just horrible. I think to your point, Brett, I really did it's tough because Sam Darnold gave us the same thing at the end of 2018. The last month of the season, he was pretty good. And then, regressed a little bit. And then again, was kind of decent down the stretch last year, despite all the things against him. I do like Haskins. I mean, I don't think that the Giants should have a higher win total than the Washington team.
I mean, in terms of win total, it'll be close because I do like the Washington front seven a lot, particularly their defensive line. But kind of going back to the secondary versus D-line conversation, they still have a lot of work to do there.
Yeah.
Their best corner is, I guess, Darby.
Kendall Fuller, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Which if your best guy is your nickel, you're probably
that's
in
sort
trouble.
of where Kansas City was 2 years ago with him too. It's you're decent in between the hash marks, but everybody with Landon Collins is okay, and then you can get beat on the outside.
The Giants have issues at corner too, because I guess DeAndre Baker's done. He's on the NFI now, so I
not a good off season for him.
No, so both of their defenses secondary wise are in huge trouble. I think Jones if everybody stays healthy, Jones probably has better weapons overall, and his offensive line too. I love the Andrew Thomas pick. Remains to be seen what's going to happen with Parrott, but honestly, as long as Solder's not starting, I'm okay with it.
Well, Solder just opted out today. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's addition by subtraction. So I think it's tough to say who has the better supporting cast around them. I don't think either team's going to be very good. I think in the divisional game against both Dallas and the Eagles, both of these teams are going to get absolutely whacked. Will they be as bad as they were last year? Probably not. I mean, it's hard to be worse, but I don't expect them to be good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think we're with you on that.
All right, this is something that I want to kind of close out with in our main topics, because the first video that I watched of yours was sent to me by a very good friend of mine, and he says, "Hey, you got to check out this 49ers run game video." I'm a Niners fan, and it's not safe for work, so it's a great time to watch it if you're a Niners fan or any fan of football at home during the quarantine. That's the time you want to watch this video. It was fascinating. It was awesome. The 49ers run game last year, I think there were kind of two big offensive, conversations. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson, I had this generational talent at quarterback. Okay, great. But then the 49ers run game, how diverse it was a topic of conversation. What is, looking to this year, do you think something that will be a topic of conversation that we haven't maybe touched on yet as a fan base, but that in studying things and looking at different concepts that you find really interesting might have a coming out party in 2020?
Specifically with the 49ers?
Well, look, if you want to regale me with the 49ers, you can, but I meant more from a league-wide perspective. Is there anything that you're particularly, that might be the 49ers run game of 2020, so to speak?
So I am ultra excited about one particular pick that the 49ers made this year, and it's Charlie Warner, who was a 6th-round tight end they took out of Georgia. That dude blocks his ass off. And Kyle took him for that reason. When you look at their receiving talent, you got Brandon Ayuk there, who I liked as a pick as well, but Debo's hurt. And keep in mind, in Kyle's pass install playbook, the first 24 pages of it are route tree. Like, it's a lot to learn for a rookie receiver, so I think expecting Ayuk to come in and just replace Debo is not realistic because there's so much to learn. Even Debo didn't really master that stuff as a rookie. That's why they got him the ball so much on sweeps and end arounds and stuff like that. Like, they just wanted to get him the ball because they knew in terms of mastering the actual pass game portion of this offense, he was not there. And I expect the same kind of progression for Ayuk, where they're really getting him more the ball on screens and sweeps and that kind of stuff. And then maybe year 2, we start to see him be an actual wide receiver for them. But I think they took Charlie Warner because they knew that their wide receiving core is very young, very inexperienced, and so they really want to lean into that run game. And so I think you're going to see Warner, Kittle, and Juszczyk out there, and they're going to rock 22 personnel a lot. More than we've seen any team do in a very long time. And they are just going to mash people. It's going to be so damn fun. Because, again, Kyle's run games, even out of 22, it's not just lining up and running, fullback lead all day. Like, it's not blowing you off the ball. It's space and angles and using motions to influence defenses and kind of create a numbers advantage through mind games and angles than just like pure brute force. That's why his run game works, is because it's so good at getting guys out of position and being in the wrong gap. And so I think looking at all that stuff they're going to do from 22 personnel, and then also having the benefit of having a fullback like Juszczyk, where you can run freaking 4 verts out of that look if you really want to. And, having the best tight end in the league in George Kittle, who also blocks his ass off, and he's an uncoverable receiver, and Werner's a better receiver than he's given credit for. Like, that's going to be their thing with Brandon Ayuk out there as well. And I cannot wait to watch it because defenses don't know how to stop that. They don't practice against that. Who practices against 22 personnel? Nobody. And it's gonna be a nightmare.
George is going to have to go from wearing that pinkish tank top to some like overalls and a flannel shirt.
I'm going to have a hard hat and a lunch pail with me when I come into the office. But one of the things that you brought up, which I thought was really interesting, is so if there was ever a year where coming out and running 22 personnel and trying to get defenders like they did in that Green Bay game in the playoffs, just every single Green Bay defender was like a gap off, and like their ability they use motion so well to put, to open up gaps and put defenders at a disadvantage. If there was ever a year where that would really work, this would be the year, right? Because there's no way that teams have prepared. Usually you would expect them to go and, be super prepared for whatever offense was good the year before. But maybe this is just me having some wishful thinking. This is the year to leverage it.
Well, and the opt-out, as our friend Brad, our colleague Brad was saying, the average opt-out weight is 275 pounds, and it's probably gone up with Nate Soldier today. Like, if you are going to be physical, this might be the year. I mean, Minnesota nose guard opted out, right? Like, the defensive lineman and offensive lineman, Eddie Kollman for Chicago, like there might be an edge to be had to being a physical team this year as opposed to other seasons. The run game is hard, though, right? I mean, it takes a lot of synchronization to run a good run game. And so that's sort of the other side of the coin. But if you can pull it off, then being a physical team might yield benefits that would be different than a normal season.
Yeah, it's still going to take me a few tequilas to get through it. Which brings me to the question I have to ask everybody. I get mixed results on this one, but in checking out your website, I have faith that you'll give me a good answer here. Which is, what is your quarantine drink of choice, Brett?
Ooh, that is so I'm a big whiskey guy, which anybody that follows my work knows that I'm a big whiskey guy and I'm a big cocktail guy. And so because bars in Southern California have not been open for a very long time, and most restaurants were closed for a while, and even then it's tough to get to get a night out these days in California. So I've been making a lot of cocktails at home. And there's one that before quarantine, I had it. And so I was trying to recreate it. And it's called Smoke It If You Got It.
Okay.
It's 1.5 ounces of rye. I use Michter's, but you can use really any rye you want.
Okay.
A 1/2 ounce of Laphroaig 10-year to give a little smokiness to it. About a 1/2 ounce, maybe you can go down to a 1/4 ounce if you want to get rid of the sweetness of maple syrup.
Ooh.
3 dashes of black walnut bitters, and then you stir it over 3 frozen cubes of coffee. It is amazing. It is so damn good. You get the coffee, you get the walnut, you get the maple, you get the smoke, you get the rye spice. It's probably a better winter drink than it is a summer drink, but when you're watching film at 2 a.m., there's nothing better. Absolutely nothing better.
We're gonna need to try that out, Eric.
We need to put. I told you for months that we need to have show notes on PFF.com. This is the exact reason why we need show notes on the website, because then all of our loyal listeners can go and, right now they're writing down on a notepad.
The good thing is we've got
I'll DM
Zach
you the picture
listening.
of it right now.
There you go. We'll put it up in the description because that sounds amazing. I've been getting really creative. I've been doing Repasado on the rocks with some orange slices. I've been getting very creative here. And my girlfriend likes old fashions but doesn't like to make them. So I've gotten very good at making old fashions and Bloody Marys, which a good Bloody Mary is worth drinking. I just don't do it that often.
Those take a lot of effort though to make a good one.
I know. The key I've found, the Clamato really helps. That gives it a little bit of spice and flavor to it that I think a lot of mixes don't have. But Smoke It If You Got It it's just such a good name. I had a drink in DC a couple years ago called a Carlos Slim, which is it's mezcal, it's egg white, it's got like a wine topper, and it's fantastic. But I was just so taken by the name. I mean, it's stuff that I like to drink anyways, but I was so taken by the name that now I order it everywhere. And people have no idea what I'm talking about, so I have to whip out the ingredients and show it to them.
I just DM'd you my recipe for a smoky mezcal pomegranate margarita too, that you and your girl would probably love on a hot day.
It's a hot day today, so there's no time like the present. Brett, tell us where everyone can find all of your stuff and what you've got coming down the pike over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so if you go on YouTube, you type in Brett Kollmann, or maybe The Film Room. There's like 10 people that have shows called The Film Room now, so maybe I'll show up, maybe I won't. But if you type in Brett Kollmann, you'll see my YouTube channel pop up. Last week earlier this Monday, I dropped an episode on Mitchell Schwartz, who I know is a PFF favorite because he's a monster, and kind of showing how he's able to eliminate elite pass rushers one-on-one every single week. And then I'm at least attempting to dive into Drew Lock right now for the next episode. I still have no idea what to make of him. So here's hoping by Friday I figure that one out. And then I'm going to get into a little bit of Isaiah Simmons after that, and kind of I'm reading a book by Coach Cody Alexander on the history of hybrid defenses and kind of looking at it going forward. And I'm kind of looking at how Vance Joseph can use Isaiah Simmons in kind of like a hybrid nickel Sam role, and how he's going to change the Cardinals defense. So there's a lot to get to before hopefully we get a football season.
Yeah, no kidding.
Let's pray. Let's hope for that. Yeah.
I'll drink to that. Brett, it was a blast, man. I appreciate you coming on. Say hello to California and the West Coast for me, and we'll have to have you on here soon in the future to talk about all of those things, especially Isaiah Simmons, because we got to get some Vance Joseph talk in here. He's a great dude. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Brett Kollmann for jumping on, for hanging out with us, for giving us some drink recommendations.
He's a man after your own heart, it looks like. Holy bucket.
He sent me some pictures of these, and what I'm going to tell you is you should go check them out on Instagram, because they're pretty damn good looking, and he gives you the whole recipe there. So you can go find them, check them out, enjoy them. We'll be back on Monday, both of us in Cincinnati. That'll be fun, and I think we have a pretty cool guest lined up. So if not, you can blame me for that. Anyways, thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys on Monday.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel, and if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.